Everyone, welcome once again to today's live session. We are seeing the book The 10 Times Rule by Grant Cardone. A great book by Grant Cardone, of course, as we always do. Before we review a book, we always see who the author is. We always review who the author is to have a better understanding of his insights. Sometimes also we know when a book was written. Knowing this also helps in understanding better, in understanding the points of the author in a more streamlined way. So let's go on to that. Who is Grant Cardone? So basically, we just always do a random Google search for this. You can always know more about Grant Cardone on YouTube. He has a YouTube channel where he still posts his videos till date. He has a YouTube channel where he teaches about sales. So what does Google have to say about Grant Cardone? Of course, he said he's an American entrepreneur, of course, showing that he's American. Also, he says he's the best-selling author and real estate investor, best known as the founder and CEO of Grant Cardone Capital. He is a highly recognized sales trainer. Of course, this is what he's good at, right? This is what even made him famous. This is what made him stood out among his peers. A sales trainer. So rather than just selling what he has to offer, selling real estate or anything, he actually trains, right? He actually trains. So now the book we are reviewing, where was it written? Grant Cardone wrote this book. That is the 10 times rule. The first time he published the book was in 2011. So this book was written in 2011. Of course, that means that is about 15 years ago, a decade and a half, right? That is when this book was written. The 10 times rule. So we are just going to go out ahead and just review the chapters. I'm just going to go to the TOC, that's the table of content, and within very few minutes, I'll review what you should expect in each of these chapters. What you should expect in each of the chapter, what Grant Cardone is trying to say, or what he's trying to prove, right? The explanation is trying to give. Of course, this book has, as we saw earlier when we were seeing the book, we saw the number of chapters is about 23. About 23 chapters. Today we are going to review just 9 chapters, and we saw that, of course, the hardcover page is about 200 pages, basically 23 chapters. So we are going to review 9 chapters today, and let's just go about with that. So the first chapter in this book, let's just see the first chapter in the book as displayed is, of course, what is the 10 times rule? In this chapter, he basically just gave an explanation to what the 10 times rule is, what it means, how you should see it, how you should, of course, it means he, according to him, shows that the 10 times rule imply it's actually applicable to everything one does, your family, your finance, your career, even also attributed it to spiritual, right? And your health. If you want to do better in anything you are doing, if you want to do the extraordinary, you have to not do the ordinary. Of course, how did he come up with this 10 times rule phenomena? How did he come up with this 10 times rule concept? According to him, he was trying to explain how that he sees that $1 million cannot actually make you retire. $1 million cannot save you. You cannot use $1 million to run emergencies and some other things, especially if you also have kids and all of that. So he now, of course, saw that if the ordinary man or the ordinary American is working towards getting $1 million, and him seeing that, of course, for you to be able to do more, you need more than that. So why not just have times 10 of $1 million? So times 10 of $1 million will mean times 10 of the effort, right? So he just explained what 10 times rule is in the first chapter. That's in chapter 1. The 10 times rule mean doing things 10 times way others are doing it. and giving several scenarios and several instances where some persons might actually trivialize such a rule, but such a rule still exists, and everyone should actually honor such a rule. And then, of course, chapter 2, it talks about why the 10 times rule is vital. In the why the 10 times rule is vital, basically, he gave several explanation of how he was already living a useless life when he was before he was 25, how he was doing drugs, confused, he didn't know where his finances was going to, and all of that. And then he got to realize that if he continues this way, he's actually not going to achieve anything. So here he just explained why the 10 times rule is vital for every single person. You have to first realize that you need to achieve more results, and you have to first realize that to get more results than the average person, you have to do times 10 of what the average person is doing. Then he defines success. Success sometimes, according to him, will depend on how exposed you are, what you know, and what you need. But most of the time, success will mean doing better, right? Success will mean doing better than others. Of course, success will mean doing better than you used to be. Success will also mean, of course, according to him, you're able to implement this into other areas of your life. Your family feels it, your health feels it, your church feels it, your career feels it, your colleagues feels it, and all of that. So according to him, of course, the kind of people you also meet or the kind of exposure you get also will make you understand or will give you a scope of what you think success is. So if you're not that exposed, of course, you might feel that success doesn't mean anything. Of course, then in chapter 4, it talks about the fact that success is your duty. In success being your duty, of course, it gives several scenarios where you have to take responsibility for every single thing that happens to you, right? You have to take responsibility of every single thing that happens to you. He gave instance of when if in his house there is no power, he has to take responsibility that okay, the reason why there is no power is because I don't have a backup plan, I do not have a generator whatsoever. No matter what happens to you, the moment you start taking responsibility for it, you start seeing success as a duty. You start seeing that you are actually obligated to ensure you are successful without any form of excuses, without putting excuses or blame on anyone. Then he say, of course, he explained the fact that there is no shortage of success. So there is no shortage of success. In explaining the fact that there is no shortage of success, of course, it shows that everyone actually can be successful, and you should see it as an obligation that is not only some few persons that can be successful. Given his story and scenario about his own life, how he lived his life. Of course, his father died when he was age 10, but then the odds were really against him, but he still became successful after first realizing himself, realizing what he wants, and then putting in the effort to that. Of course, then in the chapter 6, it talks about assuming control over everything. Yeah, like I said earlier in the fourth chapter, you have to take responsibility for every single thing that happens to you. You have to first acknowledge that you are responsible for anything that happens to you. You are responsible for any change you want. You can control anything around you. Any failure you have, you can control it without putting blame on everyone. Then with that way, you can easily apply the 10 times rule. Then in chapter 7, we talk about the 4 degrees of action. Here, he explained the first degree, the second degree, the third degree, and the fourth degree. The first degree is where you would not want to be at, right? Of course, according to him, is where you are not just doing anything, you are just there. Second degree also similar to that, you just want to remain on the average. The third and the fourth degree is where you just want to have massive results. He explained the fact that because of this and because of the kind of work he puts in, some people just call him a manic, some people just feel like he's just working too much, but that he doesn't give it them, because to get the 10 times result than any other person, you have to put the 10 times the effort what they are putting in. And of course, he also explained that luck, as we all say it, and as you might all think or assume, luck actually comes to people that are prepared and people that put in more work. That is why we now call it work. Luck. The more work you put in, according to him, the more work you put in, the more effort you put in, the more luckier you tend to get, and the more opportunity you tend to see and jump on. Then in chapter 8, it talks about average. Average is a failing formula. Of course, average is a failing formula. You shouldn't be average because every other person is average, and with average you can't survive. With average, most of the time you can't help your family. So you need to see it as a responsibility to want to not be an average person, because the average person will always complain. Then he explained 10 times goal in chapter 9, similar to what he has been saying every goal you set, you have to try to do times 10 of it and not just the norm, because with the norm you won't get an extraordinary result. Then in chapter 10, which is the final chapter in this review, it talks about competition is for sissies. Of course, that explains that you shouldn't plan to compete, you should plan to dominate. You explain domination here, right? Of course, competing will mean that you are trying to be like someone, right? Competing will mean that you are trying to achieve what someone else is achieving. You are looking at someone, according to him, of course, in the book, you will not be creative when you are just competing. Instead of thinking of competition, you should think of dominating. So this is a great book you should read, and that's going to be the end of the chapter, written by Cardone, a great author. We've seen the chapter 1 to the chapter 10. We've seen what he explained, and what you should know about him is someone that goes all out to just get results, right? To get an extraordinary result, if instead of, according to him, if it's observed that to get an extraordinary result, or you need to do times 10 of what others are doing, just apply to anything you are doing basically. So if you are basically a sales guy and others are calling 10 persons per day, you have to call 100, right? If you are into health or sports, others are in the gym for just 1 hour per day, you have to be in the gym for 10 hours. You have to just do it in order to be the best, in order for you to be the best and to get results. So that is actually going to be all for today. Thank you so much for joining in. I'm going to see you in the next episode of this book. A great book to read, and a book that will actually set you on your toes to work hard so that you can see results. See you in the next episode.